Good afternoon, everyone. Today we have our not regular scheduled meeting for the Ways and Means because that should have happened on Tuesday. However, Tuesday is election day and we've moved the meeting up forward. So thank you for coming. I'm the chair of the committee, Councilmember Abdul Sami, and we are joined by Council Members Johnson, Fletcher, and Vice President Andrea Jenkins. And we are a quorum of the committee and can therefore conduct our business today. And what we will start with our consent items. We have 24 consent items and 2 items for discussion. And I'll read out the consent items, and they are as follows. Item number 1 is a contract amendment with Bremer Bank for the addition of a Master Treasury Management Services Agreement. Item number 2 is refunding of 2011 and 2012 library referendum refunding bonds. Item number 3 is a purchase of owner's protective professional indemnity insurance policy with Berkeley Construction Professionals for the new public service building project. Item number 4 is a contract amendment with Ebert Inc. for the under freeway impound lot. Item number 5 is a contract amendment with Skidata Inc. for support, maintenance, and upgrade costs. Item number 6 is a contract amendment with Northern Lions Contracting for the East Side Storage and Maintenance Facility Demolition Project. Item number 7 is a bid for the East Side Storage and Maintenance Facility Project. Item number 8 is the office lease with Hillcrest Development for an employee assistance program. Item number 9 is an office lease with Grace in the City Church for the Minneapolis Police Department. Item number 10 is a target market program staff direction, rescinding the council action of 2018, directing the city staff, city coordinator's office through the supplier diversity work group to present options that adapt the target market program to align with the city's goals of equity, incorporating racial, gender, and geographical equity into the program within this state status and federal laws. And I read that out because I just wanted to make sure that we understood that we are rescinding staff direction that we made earlier this year. Item number 11 on our consent is contracts with various vendors for the Target Center for Minneapolis Convention Center Consulting Pool. Item number 12 is a contract amendment with People's Electric Company, Inc. for contract closeout of the Convention Center wall scone replacement project. Item number 13 is a local government amicus brief. Item number 14 is a Downtown East Commons gift acceptance and donor recognition wall. Item number 15 is a staff purchasing and joint powers letter reports for June 2018. Item number 16 is a contract with Canon Solutions America, Inc. for maintenance and support of Geographical Information Services, or GIS, OCE plotter. Item number 17 is a contract with N. Harris Computer Corporation for the appraisal software support and services used by the assessor's office. Item number 18 is a grant from the Minnesota Justice Foundation for the Summer Law Clerk Program. Item number 19 is a Minneapolis Pathways 2018 agreement. Item number 20 is a 2018 city budget amendment for the Minneapolis Pathways Employment and Training Services. Item number 21 is a contract amendment with Hennepin County for construction of the I-35W and Lake Street Transit Access Project. Item number 22 is a grant application for 2018 Federal Highway Safety Improvement Program. Item number 23 is a bid for Plaza Parking Ramp Boiler Replacement Project. And item number 24 is a bid for Street Cap Maintenance Services. Now, I move approval. Is there discussions on any of the items, consent items? Okay, so I make a motion to approve. Oh, there is a discussion. Council Vice President Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair Wasami. I was hoping that we can move item number 10, the rescinding of the 2018 council action, to discussion.
Okay, so I will move that item to discussion. Any other comments or discussion? So I make approval to approve all the consent items apart from item number 10 that we'll move for discussion. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those against? And that has been approved. So now what we will do is we will start with our discussion items, starting with item number 10 and Council Member Jenkins.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm just curious, we're rescinding the council action. to present options that would align the target market program with our goals. Are we replacing that with another request? Has that request been answered? And
from what I understood in agenda setting, this was Council Member Cunningham who had the staff direction.
mm-hmm.
And after consultation with city staff and the coordinator's office, they decided that this was already being done and that this staff direction was not needed. And I think Council Member Fletcher was also there. And what was your read? I'll bring you into it.
I wasn't this week.
You wasn't this week. Okay, sorry. So he wasn't this week. My apologies. But that was the reason. It was Council Member Cunningham basically requested to rescind this since it will overlap some of the work that was being done
Mm-hmm.
by the coordinator's office.
Is there an opportunity to hear from the target market program to update us on the work that's being done at some time in the future?
Certainly, that's something that I can ask the coordinator's office to come and give us a presentation and maybe answer this question that you posed today
Mm-hmm.
of why that this particular staff direction was rescinded. I think that's something I will ask in the future.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Council Vice President. Now what we will do is go to our scheduled, Council Member Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm wondering if because nobody present is clear on what motivated rescinding this, if we should, if it would be appropriate to move this to the council without recommendation so that we can discuss it in the COW and get a little more clarity about. So I'd move this item without recommendation from this
Get
committee.
staff to come in and maybe talk to us in COW.
Or even just to have Councilmember Cunningham, since he initiated this item, that way he can be present to speak to it.
I have no problem with that. Okay.
I'm
Any
comfortable
discussion?
with that as well.
Okay. All right. So we can move. I'll give you the floor.
So
you can make a motion.
So I'll move item 10 without recommendation.
Okay. All those in favor of Councilmember Fletcher's motion?
Aye.
Aye.
All those against? That passes. Thank you very much for that. Now we move to our next scheduled discussion, which will be item number 26. And I'm going to call on Jeff Schneider.
Councilmember,
Yes,
I'm sorry, did you take a vote for all the rest of the consent agenda?
we did.
We did.
We did.
Okay, I'm sorry, I guess.
Do you want me to do it again? You want to do it again?
No, if you did, then it's on the record. Thank you.
We did. Thank you, Kelly. So now we have item number 26 on our agenda, and I'm going to call on Jeff Schneider, and I also acknowledge the University of Minnesota guest, Pamela Webb is also here, Associate Vice President of Research. So thank you for being here, and go ahead, Jeff.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Jeff Schneider. I work in the city coordinator's office. We were before both Enterprise Committee and your committee back in June with a request to enter into a conversation with the University of Minnesota to arrange two master agreements, one related to research and technical assistance activities and one related to real estate access that was requested by Public Works. We're back today. I'm very pleased to be back today to say we have reached agreement with the university on the first of the two contracts around research. And so we are here to request your approval for that contract. This is modeled largely on a long-time existing contract between the university and Hennepin County, which they've had in place for almost 15 years. Having one umbrella contract between the two institutions allows the actual work to take place via much shorter form work order projects is what we call them. So it's less cumbersome than exchanging full-blown contracts for every $10 or $20 or $50,000 piece of work. So this has worked well for Hennepin County. They've had 140 plus projects go through their system. They just renewed their contract for, I think, the third or fourth time. And we would like to kind of arrange something. As I told Enterprise Committee back in June, 2 years ago, we had something like 42 contracts with the University of Minnesota between us and the university. More recently, it's gone down to maybe 10 or 15, but it's still many, and we'll be in an ongoing relationship with the university, and this whole arrangement is just to make that working relationship smoother and more streamlined. That's the whole point. I am, as we anticipated back in June, I am obligated to mention, with the able assistance of City Attorney Dan Hammer, we have agreed to the university's request to own intellectual property rights. This is the one significant variance from our standard terms and conditions. This is about patents and first publication rights. This is something the university has with Hennepin County, so we're modeling that arrangement. We still get access to all of our work products, all of our materials, and in the unlikely case that there is a patentable outcome of a research project, and they've never had one at Hennepin County, if we are a co-inventor, the university has agreed to share in those rights. That is a highly unlikely outcome, but that is something that they value highly, and so that is a variance from what our normal terms and conditions that I must point out. I will also, at the same time, on the advice of the city attorney, mention that should a department want to enter into an arrangement with the university with a different understanding of this, of IP rights, they are free to go off and negotiate a separate contract. They don't have to use this master. We think most departments will want to, because it'll be a much easier process for them. And in fact, we've got 3 projects sort of in the queue right now to work to move forward under this arrangement. So, as the chair mentioned, we do have with us today Pamela Webb, Associate Vice President for Research. That is in the university side of this conversation, together with their attorney, and Eric Garcia Luna, who most of you know is the director of the university's local government relations office. Okay, so, and they're both available for questions and could make a brief statement if the chair so desires.
Yep.
So.
All right, thank you very much. And I just wanted to mention the great work that you've done in terms of this negotiation, and the fact that we're here having a positive story and a positive outcome is wonderful. Council Member Jenkins.
Thank you, Chair Osami, and thank you, Mr. Schneider. And I do applaud the efforts that I know went into reaching this level of agreement. Can you help me with some examples of the types of contracts that we enter into with the university?
Well, yes, Mr. Chair and Councilmember Jenkins. So the health department has had a long-standing set of contracts, research, where they may get some grant funds to hire university health, researchers to do work there. A couple of I'll just mention a couple of the pending contracts or projects in the coordinator's world, which I'm a little more familiar with. There's out of the sustainability office, there is ongoing interactions with various units of the university. One of which is over in St. Paul, the applied agriculture and applied economics, and Tamara Down-Shoye is in conversations with some researchers there to do some work around food policy. Another part of sustainability is in conversations with, I can't remember the unit of the university, around the transference, the transition to renewable energy. And there's research happening at the U around that. And so those are 2 of the pending projects. Police department has had research projects. CPED has had research projects. When I was at CPED 10 years ago, we hired Kira to help us do outreach for the 2010 census, for example. That was a contract I was personally involved in. As you may recall, 2 years ago, CPED hired a unit of the Humphrey Institute to do the minimum wage impact evaluation. That was a prospective study projecting the impact, and that was led by Dr. Sam Myers at the Humphrey Institute. So it really runs the gamut. It's CPED, it's health, it's the coordinator. I think there, at last count, there were something like 7 departments that had contracts with the university. So, and this is just a vehicle to make that work easier. So, if that helps.
So this new wrinkle though around trademarks and I guess ownership of ideas, is that a standard policy across industries, or?
Well, that the ownership of intellectual property is negotiated on a case-by-case basis between parties. As I said, Hennepin County's arrangement with the university gives the university the intellectual property rights. That has not been an issue for anybody at the county using the results of the work product. Cities and counties are not so much in the patent and publication business. We are in the doing business, and the university is in the publication business and in the patent business. And I would invite, Ms. Webb here has much more background on this if you would like to hear from her directly. So this is a standard part of the university's contract, and she is more able to speak to that than I am. So.
Yeah. Before that, I have any more questions?
No.
We have.
I'll be interested to hear from Ms. Webb.
Yeah,
though, but
sure.
yes.
We have a question from Councilmember Fletcher.
I would invite Ms. Webb to go first.
Okay. All right. Vice President Webb. And I wanted to mention, I forgot Eric Garcia Luna is here as well. So I wanted to give a shout out to Eric, somebody I've known for a while, and it's good to have you here, Eric. Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Webb.
Certainly. So basically, this is based on university policy and also U.S. policy, because the law actually provides for patent rights to go to whoever it is the inventor of an invention. And the university has a fantastic technology commercialization program. It was recently ranked 4th in the nation for its ability to take technology, find companies who are interested in continuing to develop it and market it, and get it out into the public. So part of the reason that the university likes this approach is that we have the mechanisms in place to take ideas that may be potentially patentable and commercialize them and get them out to the public. So we feel like we're serving the citizens of the state and the city the best in order to be able to take ownership of inventions. Frankly, our faculty expect that as well. Our faculty, unlike in industry, when you work for industry, the industry gets all the revenue. If you do make money on an invention, our faculty get 1/3 of any revenue that comes in. And the rest goes into the research program to just fuel the enterprise and, of course, pay the expenses of the program. So for us, this is key for our faculty to want them to engage in the program, but it's also absolutely standard to them. It's true for every federal agreement that we have, has exactly these same provisions. And the vast majority of our funding, as you may be aware, is federal. So we have this arrangement in our county agreement as well. And even though these patents in particular come up infrequently, copyright comes up all the time. And that's the ability, of course, for our faculty to publish in journals for when they have an inventive or a novel idea, or to have basically the results of the work they do is to get it out to the public. The city has the absolute right to use all of this information free of charge for whatever purpose you want to use it for. That is not a restriction in any way. It's simply for our faculty, when they go to publish in a journal, they are unable to do that unless they can work with the journal about getting that published. Does that help?
Thank you very much.
Sure. Are there other questions I can answer for you?
No, thank you. We have a question from Councilmember Fletcher.
Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Less a question and more of a comment, just to say I really do think this is a huge step forward, and I think it's very exciting. I've long felt that we were sort of leaving opportunities on the table when you look at studies in other metro regions of the way that universities are sort of critical parts of the economic engine that really drives what's happening in a region. It's never felt like Minneapolis has fully taken advantage of the relationship and the resources that we have here. And it would be such a great problem to have if we were fighting over all of the great patentable discoveries that we're making together as we solve the big, scary problems that we're facing in the future around how to make density and our aging infrastructure and everything else really work and really sing and move us into a new energy economy and feed everybody who's coming here and all the other problems that we're trying to solve together. So I really hope that we bring a lot of the most interesting problems that the city faces to you, and that you invent and publish and do amazing things together, and that we all are able to benefit from that and really build something together. And I hope that this makes it easier. I know that, we obviously, universities are very oriented towards the sort of NSF grant model and a lot of those things, and we're very different as a funder, and so negotiating what that contract looks like and how that works. There's obviously some sort of natural mismatches between each of our institutional assumptions, so I'm glad we were able to hammer that out and sort of make at least a first stab at this really makes sense. So I'm excited. I'm enthusiastic. I really want to see people feeling really motivated and not feeling like they have to make a choice between doing civic research projects or doing projects that will benefit their tenure profile and advance their academic careers. I want those things to be very unified, and so I'm glad that we've sort of been able to work this out, and I'm excited to see how this works and for us to keep iterating and improving it as we go. So big thank you to Jeff and to you, Ms. Webb, for really, making this agreement work, and I'm excited to move it forward.
Thank you very much. We're excited as well. And we're excited also for the opportunity it gives for our students, because they get to work then on real life problems and real life issues and be able to contribute to solutions and turn around, and hopefully that will influence their long range career decisions as well as they participate in these projects.
Thank you very much, Ms. Webb. And I wanted to acknowledge that we've been joined by Councilmember Cunningham. And just to get you up to speed, we're on item number 26. We have one more item of discussion left. Is there any further information that we need from the team? Again, thank you very much to the city staff as well as the university team for coming to this agreement. Thank you. And I make a motion. Is there any further discussions, my colleagues? I see none, so I make a motion to approve this item, and let me read the item. Item number 26 is a master contract with the University of Minnesota for research, consulting, and technical assistance services. I make approval. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against? That item has been approved. Thank you very much, and again, congratulations. And now we have a final item, item number 25, which is the benefits and costs of certification of the city's eligible municipal bond issues. And we have our CFO, Mark Ruff, and his wonderful intern, Mikkel, to do this presentation. Mikkel, go ahead.
Chairman, council member, before I start, I'd like to thank every single one of you for taking the mantra of public service. I know it's an arduous task, and that sometimes you guys are not appreciated, but I appreciate you. And part of that is being able to provide an environment that's friendly for all. And green bonds will provide that benefit for citizens of Minneapolis. So before we go on to what are green bonds, I want to tell you that I talked to a couple of municipalities within the $100,000 band of population size compared to Minneapolis. So Portland, Long Beach, California, Kansas, and this PowerPoint implements some of their suggestions as well as the things that they told me not to do. So what are green bonds? Green bonds are used to finance or refinance green projects. Green projects include climate change adaptation, clean transportation, sustainable water, wastewater management, etc. So the pros of green bonds is it enhances the brand. It's a signifier to the citizens and other people of this nation that the city of Minneapolis is serious about environmentally friendly projects. And it has the potential to lower interest rates costs, because if the bond is issued out and some of the investors would like to oversubscribe to it. The cons, thanks to Mr. Ruff here, the city of Minneapolis is well run. right? We have AAA rating. And because of it being a government municipality, it also is tax exempt. So it may not necessarily have a measurable benefit in that sense. And then there's the process itself is somewhat vague that allows for opportunities for the city to be creative. So the U.S. Green Bond key facts. So $42.2 billion were issued 2017. Most of the issuers tend to be Democratic, larger cities, New York City, California, within their municipality sub-departments, Massachusetts. The major types of green bond issued were water, transportation, and building efficiencies. So steps to certifying the green bond. So first, the issuer prepares a green bond. So that means picking out the project, figuring out the benefits that it may have for the environment, and how the bond proceeds would be spent. Then the issuer engages the license verifier. So verifiers gives green thumbs of approval, pun intended, and then issuer gets certified and issues the bonds. There's post-issuance verification, and then there's annual reporting of the project's progress in the sense of monitoring the benefits, the environmental benefits, and how the bond proceeds are spent to the project. So green bonds is a misnomer. There are two types of green bonds. There's the green bond principle, which tend to be somewhat more vague, and a lot of municipalities tend to use this structure because it's more cost effective and allows the municipalities to adjust certain criteria. The regulatory body is the International Capital Market Association. The framework encompasses all types of projects. So if it's a building efficiency, a water project, a solar project, you can create a framework, which what creates it more cost effective, and then you can issue out bonds, which is having the framework certified. There's no regulatory body that enforces the standard. So once the consultant gives you the green thumb of approval, you can just issue out the bonds. The other one's the climate bond. The climate bond initiative was made for the French agreement to get all the Paris agreement to get all the degrees of temperature within the increase within 2 degrees Celsius to maintain. And then each type of project has its own criteria to satisfy. So if it's a solar bond, it has its own criteria. If it's a building efficiency, it has its own criteria. And if it's a water bond. And the CBI enforces this standard. So after you get the green thumb of approval, it goes to CBI. It's normally a 2-week process. They tell you if you can issue out your bonds or not. And if not, they help you mitigate those circumstances that prevented you from issuing it out as green. So I'm gonna give you an example of a green bond principle, specifically using the Moody's verification process. So the weights when Moody verifies if the bond is green, it's through organization 15%, and it goes down the list. And depending on what you get within each percentile, can make you GB1 to GB5. I was talking to a Moody's analyst. It doesn't really matter in the sense of the cost, that if you're GB1 or GB5, it doesn't make your bonds more costly. However, the Moody analyst said that 88% of all of the entities that he has worked with tend to get GB1 excellent. You'll take this with a grain of salt because it means that it's self-biased. Individuals or entities that are willing to go to this process are willing to be GB1. The remainders have been GB2. There's nothing that's been below that, and it hasn't affected their bonds in the sense of marketability. So as I stated earlier, the Climate Bond Initiative has multiple criteria depending on the type of project. For example, if the city of Minneapolis with its new building issues that out, then within the criteria, because it's LEED gold and it's has other criteria, then it would be considered green. And that process is somewhat different from the green bond principle. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Mr. Ruff, that he would do the last slide.
Good job.
Thanks, Mikkel. As Mikkel alluded to, we have commonly now within the city used this LEED certification. I think it's Leadership in Energy and Design, which generally council policy for our new buildings. We try to get this LEED version 4 gold status. As you know, the highest is LEED Platinum, which we have, I think, on one facility achieved, but found that LEED Gold is a more cost-effective and practical way for certification. Typically, the architects handle that certification. With a green bond, it is a combination of our staff and then this outside consultant that would handle the certification process. There are two different types of consultants. One is the regular bond rating agencies. So Michaela alluded to Moody's, also Standard & Poor's has a green bond certification. There are also consulting firms, ESG firms, which have great amount of experience over a number of years. They tend to be cheaper up front and potentially cheaper over a period of time. I think our reason for our presentation today is just to get feedback from the committee. I think we're leaning towards moving in a direction of our request for quotes, which would be a contract well under 100,000, so it would not require council approval. But before we did that, we wanted to bring this to you, both because the immediate benefits that Mikkel outlined in terms of lower interest rates aren't there today in the market, but also, as he outlined, I think there's some desire for Minneapolis to lead on this issue. And even though it may cost us a little bit more in interest cost, including these fees over a period of time, hopefully we're setting ourselves up to building a system. But we want to make sure you are aware of what kind of costs we're talking about. A few $1,000s a year. Potentially, we would have to separate out bond issues. So when we sell a bond, we tend to amalgamate all of our project into one large bond issue. For this fall, we do have a large bond issue on its own, which would be financing part of the new office building. And then the contract you have on the Ways and Means agenda for the 27th and University East Side facility, because both of those facilities are LEED Gold, we believe they would qualify for a green bond. And so we would separate that out. When you have separate bond issues, again, slightly higher interest rates because you don't get as many buyers for smaller bonds as you do for larger bonds. But we feel like, at least based on initial feedback from individual conversations with council members and generally the theme of Minneapolis, that this is a good investment. But again, just want to check with you. And then also we would lean more towards these ESG consulting firms, just because we want to separate our rating relationship from our green bond relationship, and also because Mikkel's research has shown that these ESG firms can probably help us in more informal ways in terms of telling us what other cities are doing that can help us more generally, whereas we may not get that from the rating agencies. So I just want to thank Mikkel for his good work. For those of you who haven't met Mikkel, he's leaving the end of this week, go back and finish his third year of law school at University of Pennsylvania, and he's also a CPA. So just a lawyer who knows numbers. I know it's a rarity here in the world, but no offense, Eric. But just very pleased that he's able to make many contributions to the department in the short time he's been here this summer. Mr.
Thank you. Any discussion? Council Vice President Jenkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Up and Mikkel. What a great presentation. I'm curious. So green bonds can be used for any project. It doesn't have to be a energy focused project.
Council member? So green bonds are mostly used for energy related projects and things that are impactful to the environment. So if it's a social project, like the sense of creating new housing, that wouldn't fall under green bonds unless the building has like efficiencies that lead it to LEED Gold and so forth.
Right. So it could be an affordable housing project, but it's LEED Platinum.
Yes.
So then it would qualify for
green, but it would
green bonds.
It will be allocated proportionally to what they perceive as the percentage that would be going to making the building efficiency, making the building more efficient. And then the other aspect would be more to social. It would be a social bond, and that would be into creating better housing for our citizens.
And is that a part of the variables, social?
So
doesn't look like it.
Depending on what type of principle you use, they will require the bond proceeds to be allocated at a certain percentage. So if you did green principles and you wanted the highest rating under Moody's, you would have to have 95% of the bond proceeds allocated to the green project. So if it's separated between social and green under the green principle, you might have a lower rating. However, when it comes to the climate bond initiative, it will not qualify.
Okay.
I have. Any,
No, I'm done. Okay.
Thank you, Councilmember Jenkins.
Chair, if I can just add one thing on that.
Go ahead.
Is, as Mikkel's indicated, this whole certification process is in its early forms, really nationally and internationally. It's kind of like LEEDs. Now LEED is not the only certification for buildings. I think Councilmember Johnson has talked about Living Building Challenge, which is a higher level, but LEED has kind of taken most of the market share. That's not necessarily the case with this green certification. It's an early process, and there's also a resilient bond initiative, which I know that the state of Oregon has just utilized for some affordable housing bonds. And so we may find that this evolves over a period of time, so that but definitionally, even within green bonds, it's still a little murky. So if it seems a little uncertain, I think there's good reason for that. But again, being on the leading edge of this, we hopefully will help form some of that. And I would expect over time there'll be more definition.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Before I turn to my colleagues, I have one question I want to slip in, which is the new building. Would it be the green bond principle, GBP, or would it be the climate bond? What would?
So right now, we think it's most efficient and cost effective for it to be under the green principles.
Okay.
Climate bond has very very strenuous criteria that we could still qualify for, but the ongoing monitoring would be annually. Like with the green principles, we can make it triannually, and that was where most of the cost after the building is built would go.
Okay. Thank you for answering my question. Councilmember Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for this presentation. This was really extremely helpful to understand. I guess one thing I'm trying to figure out is if we're not saving money, is the purpose of this so that investors who are wanting to invest in green tech have a sort of rationalized market to be able to do that, so that we can get money that wouldn't necessarily go to standard municipal bonds into these green bonds and sort of expand the pool of what's fundable? Or am I thinking about that the right way? Because obviously if there's not a cost savings, part of me thinks, why are we doing all this?
As all lawyers have said before me, and will say in the future, it depends. So with the green bond, it's growing exponentially. And we don't know that it will become ubiquitous and be required by all municipalities. So if we do decide not to continue or to progress as issuing a green bond, then we may be locked out of the market, and the cost might be significantly higher in the future. However, currently they're not. Right? Currently, it's more of a branding, and how investors have seen it is just like pension funds and so forth have been wanting to get into the green bonds, and it's become oversubscription. But because of how well Mark has run the city, debt, and so forth, it's not going to provide any financial benefit at this time. But it's hard to say if it will in the future or not.
And is there a quantity of scale that would get us to cost savings? How much would this program have to expand? Obviously, we've set some ambitious goals for building out renewable energy before we start to see some cost savings.
So it could be very scalable, because if we use the green principle, we can create a framework that encompasses building efficiency bonds, stormwater bonds, solar power bonds, so that the consultant only has to certify the framework. If we went to the CBI, the Climate Bond Initiative, because each type of bond requires its own certification, that would make it a lot more expensive. And we're thinking maybe, because the city of Minneapolis issues out 4 bonds annually, that we think within the year or so that it would be very cost effective. I can't necessarily provide a dollar amount at this time.
I think also, Councilmember, that part of the reason there's not savings is because the demand from the bond buying public isn't quite there yet for differentiating between local government bonds that are just regular bonds or green bonds. And I think, depending on what happens over the next year or two, I think the advantage in terms of climate change and potentially increased regulation, there are those in the bond market who would say that part of what cities might be faced with is we put a big document together every time we do a bond issue. That's a disclosure document that talks about our, status of labor contracts and how much growth we have in the city and the age of our citizens. There might be demand from bond buying public over a period of time that says, and what are you doing about climate change? Just because I use the example of 18 years ago when I was in the bond market, everybody wanted to know about what cities were doing to avoid problems with Y2K. And when the year 2000 came about and all the computers were going to stop functioning, right? That was a crisis. That was a one-day crisis. But to date, the financial markets haven't matured just yet to the point where they're going to say, what are you doing about climate change as a city? And clearly we have a good story to tell about our goals. And so I think the effort is to raise awareness on both sides, but the financial advantage is going to come when the bond buying public starts demanding it.
Good point. Thank you. Any more questions? Councilmember Fletcher? No. Councilmember Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate the presentation. I think this is great, and I'm glad that we're thinking very consciously how we can contribute to the development of this market and these products. So I hope we see more coming to this committee about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion, questions? Oh. I just wanted to mention Council Members Fletcher, our Vice Chair here, as well as Council Member Schrader, who's not here, who brought up this item to our attention and spurred this research that and presentation that we've seen. I would like to thank Mark Ruff and Mikkel for the presentation and the work, and we've had discussions in my office about this, and I think this is moving in the right direction and very supportive of it, and we want to get more information from you. So seeing no further discussion, I make approval to basically receive and file this presentation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those against? That motion passes, and having concluded the committee's business, this meeting is adjourned. So thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your election day.